Okay, awesome. Okay, so I'm going to start us off. We're on the right side. Are we unmuted? Yep. Okay, we are unmuted. Okay, awesome. So yes, my name is Angie Paganelli, and I am a former foster youth, former foster parent, and current adoptive parent to 4, including 2 with special needs. My husband and I have a ministry, Foster Blessings, and we are in Dutchess County, Ulster County, Putnam County, and Westchester County. And so if you want any information about that, I have a table out there as a vendor. It involves pizza for foster parents, so enough said. Amongst the many things that I do, I am a family support specialist here at the Coalition. I have been for 2 years, and I am studying to be a TBRI practitioner, which is trust-based relational intervention. So the idea behind that is really getting children's attachment through trust. And it's through the Caring Purvis Institute, Texas Christian University. At the end of May, I will be fully certified. And I'm like super excited, except I have to go to California, which like terrifies me. But obviously I'm passionate about it. So
you couldn't get better.
Yeah, right. I am also a neuro-linguist practitioner, which is a fancy way of saying I can match. And I was like loving Brian, what he was saying of the idea of matching and mirroring and matching and mirroring your child, because that's what children do. I will give you a very quick example. I had a child in my care whose father they were having a visitation, and she hated hamburgers, like hated them, and sat there and downed an entire hamburger because her dad liked it. And there was that mirroring that she was seeing, and she was willing to do anything to get that attachment. So that's what we're going to be covering a little bit today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start you off with an activity. So as a NLP, what I like to do is get into your head and kind of get you to think about how your child thinks. Okay, so this is the mirroring part, right? So if you're comfortable, close your eyes. If not, just kind of keep them so that you can concentrate on what I'm saying. Whatever you do, I have to go to the next slide. So wrong button. Okay, so whatever you do, do not picture a purple elephant. And whatever you do not picture the purple elephant in the White House. And now you can open your eyes. And did anybody here not picture the purple elephant? Right? Our brains cannot process in the negative. So when our children hear things, even if it's as simple as, you're doing that incorrect, right? What their brain gets a picture of is failure. They get a picture of themselves failing in that moment. And so that was just a small snippet to give you guys an idea, a look into how our brains process the words that are given to us. And words are invaluable, completely invaluable, and how we say the words, which is our, and I mean, this just ties so beautifully into Brian's like phenomenal speech, right? Because vibes, right? We give off vibes and we don't even realize it. And the first one that we give off is our voice, right? And I just want you to picture for a minute. The next day is coming up, your child has a visit. You know the behaviors are going to be off the charts tomorrow. Don't forget you have a visit tomorrow. Versus, remember you have a visit tomorrow with mom? Even though internally you're like, tomorrow afternoon is going to be really bad, outwardly expressing positive to the child is 100% key. 100%. I have said to my children 1,000 times, if I run into an old friend, I'm like, hi. I'm like, hey, right? Like same concept, totally different concept, right? The first person is like, oh, she really doesn't want to see me. The second person's like, oh, she's excited to see me. And our kids pick up on everything from a wrapper of a candy bar from the other side of the house to that nuance that we give off in our voice. The second part is inclination, our body posture, right? How was your visit with mom? Right? I'm defensive. I'm like, stay back, right? I'm not letting you in. I'm closed off, right? Versus, how was your visit? Right? Totally different body posture. how we stand, you will, like, if you implement these, you'll start to see like your kids' eyes like light up, right? Like she's interested, she's excited for me kind of thing. The third one is breathing. You would not believe how much our kids focus on our breathing. I was mid panic attack, didn't tell anybody, didn't tell a soul. And my 10-year-old came up to me and was like, "Are you okay, Mom?" And it was just, I was just breathing. That's all it was just the breathing. And she picked up on that. And I was shocked, but they are so intuitive as to what's going on around them that every little nuance, right? The next one is eyes. Okay, so they come to you and they say a bold statement, right? Kids do that. They make a bold statement. And your eyes are going to tell, like they say, like what the eyes are the window to the soul, right? If you're like shocked, right? Or if you're like suspicious, right? Your eyes tell so much about how you feel in that situation. Okay, so like even focusing on like, you know, are your eyes dilated, right? Are they like eyebrows go up, right? Like focus on how your face is presenting. And then the last one is skin, right? We get angry, our cheeks are hot, right? We're shocked, we kind of lose color, right? Like these are all things, these are all signals that send to our kids, is this a positive situation or is this not a positive situation? And when it comes to birth families, we have to keep it positive. Even if there's something there that you know could be hurtful, could be, we don't know, we just don't know the future, but all we can do is protect that relationship, keep that relationship of them in a bubble, and just you're the bubble. You're constantly protecting the bad from getting to the child, right? Like, you know, yeah, Mom might be strung out somewhere, but that's not where we're going, right? That's not where we're going. Okay. How do we communicate then? So this is from the TBRI model on communication. And these are basically ways on how to interact with your child, but you can use this with anybody. A lot of this can even be used with birth parents because you want to keep that communication open and you want to keep that communication clear. So the first thing in ideal is immediate. With a child, they say within 3 seconds, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and that's like, that's a lot of work. Like, I love the TBR phrase that you can't parent from the couch. Like, you can't do that. It has to be immediate. And I'm not talking like bad behavior, good behavior. I'm talking about any behavior, right? Like, you know, if the child stubs their toe, right? Like immediate. I'm not like, hold on, let me check out this Facebook post real fast. And hold on just 1 second, right? Like, they're like, ah. So like immediate, right? Whatever the need is, good, bad, indifferent, whatever, make it immediate. Direct. Again, you can't parent from the couch, right? Mom, so-and-so hit me. Can you not hit them, please? Right? No, like we need to be like, why did you hit? We're asking the questions. We're in their world. We're in their faces. We're doing all of the things. And these are the really important. This is where the relationship attachments are formed, is in these back and forth. I'm going to stop what I'm doing. I'm going to prioritize you. And now directly with you, we're going to handle this. And it totally enforces bonds with the child and the parent. Action-based. So this is, how do I explain this? Okay. You forgot efficient. Oh, I want to read. Yes, efficient. Sorry. Efficient is you want it to work. So you have a situation where, you know, the child is kind of beating around the bush about something, right? It could be a visit for the next day, right? Like, so I remember I have a visit the next day, right? Yeah, you do. That's not what they're looking for, right? We want it to be efficient. We want it to, you do have a visit. Is there something you want to talk about? No. Is something bothering you, right? And you want to like really use that moment to efficiently dig into what the child's actually saying and really listen to what they're saying. Now action. So action-based is looking at the need and filling it. So a lot of times, I would say in our house, probably 80%, somebody just needs a snack. That's really like, they're hungry. They're hungry, they're thirsty. It's not like some like world crisis that we're solving. Like, do you want a granola bar? Oh, I do. And you know, once they're chewing, they can't really like have a meltdown. That's what I've learned. So once they're chewing on that granola bar, they're like, and you're like, breathe through a granola bar. Right? So right. Granola bars could like solve world everything. And so the action fills the need. So again, if they stub their toe, they need a hug, right? They're probably going to need a Band-Aid. Are they bleeding? No, they're going to need a Band-Aid. Okay, they might even need like gauze and like all that. Oh, there's nothing wrong. You stubbed your toe, but it's okay. But you're showing action through love. And so it's basically like, again, putting the child above what you need, what you want in that moment, which a lot of times for us is our phones. And then leveled. Where are you leveling the action? If you're leveling the action at the child, okay, the child is having a meltdown because they want waffles. There's no waffles in the house, but they want waffles. And so the meltdown is happening. And if you go to the child and say, that's silly, there are no waffles, do not have a meltdown. Are they going to stop? No, you're probably going to have something thrown at you. So instead of leveling it at the child, we level it at the behavior. Okay, your behavior is that you want waffles. I can't give you waffles, but I can give you this, and you try to match whatever they want. And when it comes to food, I would say a very, very good portion. Just assume that your child, your adopted child, your foster child has food insecurities. Just assume it. And food insecurities, by the way, leads into adulthood. And that means that when my refrigerator is empty, I start panicking for my children. That means like every week I do a full grocery shop, even though I'm like fully stocked, because I'm terrified that my kids are going to wake up tomorrow and not have something to eat. And that stems from being 8, 9, 10 years old and having nothing in my house for my little sister, not even for me, for my little sister. So when we level the action more at the behavior rather than the child, that helps to calm the child, right? We learned today about the amygdala, and we learned about the prefrontal cortex, which is all TBRI training. And so what we want is that child to say, I really want waffles. Would you take a pancake, right? And the child, oh, yeah, I mean, they're basically the same thing without holes, right? But you can't tell the child that. They're not going to believe you. They will not believe you. So what the whole goal is to get that child to say, I want this so bad. Can you take this? And so you're leveling at the behavior and not the child. Okay, now I'm going to switch over to my amazing good friend.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Doyle. I am a mom to 18 children. I have 4 biological, have 7 adopted, 1 foster that is about to be adopted, and then we have 6 that have returned home, but they will always be my babies, so I will always tell you that I have 18 babies. My husband and I founded Fostering Hope together, which is a nonprofit that just helps bring resources to foster care, whether it be, and it kind of follows the child. So if a birth family needs resources, we're there. If a kinship family needs resources, we're there. If a foster family, adoptive family needs resources, we're there. Because let's be honest, we all need resources, right? So that's what our organization does. And so we're going to, Angie just gave some really good practical ways to kind of pay attention to our language and kind of what we're portraying to our children when we're having conversations. And now we figured we could kind of go through, in a child's eyes, their journey through foster care. And as foster and adoptive parents, a lot of it is out of our control, right? We're going to give you some from our own experiences, from what we've learned. How can we kind of have that control to help our child be as resilient, we heard all day today, as possible, right? And we play a very active role in that. I know a lot of times we feel like we're not in control, but there's so much we have control of to help our child feel as whole as possible. So we're going to go through supporting a child through their foster care journey using connection through language. Okay, so first, navigating care, removal. So removal is really hard. There's a lot of fear. Our little guys, you know, if they're more than a couple of months old, they feel the new surroundings and they feel like they're in a stranger's home. And they feel that at a very young age. And they even feel that when they're a baby and they're separated from their mom in the womb. They feel that, even though I didn't know that at first, I have realized that they do. So what can we do to help them navigate through them with our language and our actions. So first is welcoming statements. They're coming into a stranger's home. And the first thing we have to do is let them know that they are welcome in our home, that they belong here, that our home is their home for as long as they need it, that we're in their corner, that we're here for them, however that looks. But it's really important to make them feel at home the second they walk through our door, right? And even like, here are the bathrooms, here's what we do here, right? Because they've never been in our home before, and it's really important that we take the time to make those statements to show them that they feel welcomed with our words. The second thing is questions. So it's really important. We know nothing about them, and they know nothing about us, right? So by opening up the dialogue so we had, as an example, we had a 9-year-old and 12-year-old come into our house. They were removed, they were separated, their siblings, they were separated. They were put in our home so that they could be back together. And the first thing we did was we sat at the kitchen table and I'm like, what are your favorite foods, right? You like the cereal that I don't normally buy? I'm gonna go buy that cereal because that's what gives you comfort, right? What are some foods you don't like, right? Because there's nothing like, as much as we're making welcoming statements, if they hate hamburgers and our first meal is a hamburger, what is that like? They're sitting there again in that space where they don't feel that maybe that welcome, right? So just having those, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? Do you have a comfort item? Is there something you like to do before you fall asleep? Like just having that dialogue and making sure that they have a voice, that you care, right? And it comes off like those two kiddos will tell me to this day that they still remember that, and they still remember that I got the Captain Crunch and the brownies and all the things that I didn't buy. And my other kids actually told me they loved cookies, they said. And so I started baking cookies. And they're like, Mom, we don't get cookies. And I'm like, okay, so I'll give you cookies too. But like, just whatever we can do, right? So that they feel heard, that they feel seen, that they feel safe. And that's the next point is safe place language, right? Not only do we want to make those statements, we want them to know that our house is a safe place. That if they want to talk, we're here for them. If they don't want to talk, we don't want to force them either, right? That we're just here, however that looks like. And I tell my kiddos, every single one that has walked through my doors, I'm like, I will always be a support to you, however that looks. And these two kiddos I was just talking about, they left after 2 months. They went to family, and I was sobbing at the kitchen table because I was going to miss them. And they're like, don't cry. You said we're always going to be back. Like we're always, because they hear those words and they know that I'm not just saying the words, that there's actions behind them, right? And one of those kiddos went back home and 2 years later came and said, can I stay on your couch for the night? I'm having a tough time at home. I'm like, sure. He stayed for 2 years. So again, making those statements, making them feel like a safe place, but really backing it up, right? Our role is to be there and be a support to them, however long they need it. And it might be longer than they're in care. You know, that's like an honor that we get to do, but really in the beginning, setting that trust, setting that ability to like, let them feel seen and heard with our language and our actions is really important.
So little activity. When the kids hear language, right? And I'm trying to, well, actually, let me do a little shameless plug right now. So this is a book that my son and I wrote. He is 10. He was adopted when he was 3. He was the first of our 20 foster kids to come and go. And so he knows all the things about foster care. He knows all the lingo. And so what this book is, I'll tell you, we had a 16-year-old. And when we were in the car, she was and then we get home and she was like crickets. And so I very quickly figured out that when we're in the car, we're facing the same direction, right? And she doesn't feel that confrontation of having to be face to face, right? And so putting that all together in my brain, I'm realizing as you're reading a book, it's the same thing. right? So these are a series of questions for kids that come into care because you don't know. I'll tell you, day 3 of being in care, we had spinach and salmon. And like my sister and I thought we were gonna die. Like that was it. Like we were gonna starve here. And so
You're thinking you're giving them a great meal, right? And they're like, what is this?
I'm like, we need Burger King. And so how do you ask children without like maybe asking children, right? And that's where this comes into play is, some of the questions are like, how about you? I'm sorry, there might be different toys here. Feel free to play. How about you? What are some of your favorite toys? And the other part of this book is that as the questions are asked, this house might be different. What's it like at your house? What you're conveying is I'm not replacement, right? That's still your mom, that's still your dad, that's still your house. None of that has changed.
Yeah.
And so what we want to convey to children is that this is a place where you are now. And we're talking about days of placement. We're not talking a year and a half when TPR is looming down the road. We're talking about in the beginning, we have no idea what tomorrow's going to look like. But all we need to do is tell those children, tell 13-year-old Angie that it's okay, that your mom is still there. Everyone is still there. You're just here in this moment. And so, is that my table? Anyway, you can follow the QR code to get that. Okay. How many of you heard this? I'm so guilty of this, and I like now that I think about it, I get like choked up. Congratulations on becoming foster parents. Okay, what does the child hear? The child hears, congratulations. I just lost my mom. I just lost my dad. I just lost my siblings, my dog, my da. Congratulations, right? And when I said it, when we first became certified, I was excited because there was a chance that my husband and I wouldn't be certified. My husband had like a whole like wild party past, and I was like, we're not gonna get certified. And, everyone was like, yes, you are. But I was scared that we wouldn't. And so when I then approached others, I'm like, oh, congratulations, because I assumed everybody went through the same struggle, but everyone didn't. And so, but then I learned the language over time, and I realized congratulations says a whole different message, rather than thank you for being foster parents. And then the child hears, wait, this person's stepping up for me, right? This person is going outside of what they have to do for me, and that gives them comfort. So this is that whole imaging thing that they have in their head that really depends on the language that we use.
Yeah, and it's really important. How many of you been on the grocery store line and somebody starts talking to you and they realize you're a foster and adoptive parent, and they start asking really awkward questions, really saying things, and you have to like redirect them, right, to that what you want our children to hear if they're standing on the grocery store line with us, right? And people, I don't think they mean harm by it. I think they're trying. But some of the things are like you just want to take your card and just leave the grocery store without even responding, right? But it's important how we respond, because our kiddos, if they're with us, they hear it. So next, navigating care, family connection. So as soon as they're removed, they have, they come with those family connections. Let me start there. Is really important as foster and adoptive parents to help bridge that gap for them, and help there not be this picture, which kind of chokes me up. But if you think about it, these can be, let's just say it's my husband and I and our foster child in the middle. That's their birth parent over there. And they desperately want to be able to be part of that, right? Mm-hmm. And it might look like they might look at it, they might be angry, they might have animosity towards us, right? But all they want in their scared self, right, their whole world has crumbled down, is that peace and that connection, to be still connected to their child. So how do we bridge that gap? Introductions. I always say, I learned very quickly that it's really, really important to meet, if it's not a kinship setting, to meet the birth parent or birth parents face to face. And I'll be honest, it can be uncomfortable, right? It can be uncomfortable. So like, I'll show you kind of an example of how our first placement, how it played out, and how I realized the importance of it. So we were meeting our daughter's biological mom and grandma, and we were on our way up the elevator, and our home finder said, "Mom seems pretty like angry," right? And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, you know, like I can do this, you know? And so we sat down and in the room, and I could immediately feel the anger, the hurt, the brokenness. And I was like, just push through, be loving, be supportive. And for the first 10 minutes, it was really awkward. I'll be honest. I could feel and sense that, you know, that animosity. And my husband said to her, "Would you be able to get us a picture of yourself and her dad so that we could put it in her room, because I want her to see you every day. I know she can't be with you every day, and I know that you're working on getting her back, and she'll be with you soon," right? Because we can encourage that. Even if that is not what the outcome is, we can encourage that and hope for that, right? And immediately it changed. Immediately the energy changed by just offering, "Can you send a picture so that we can put it in her room?" Because they want to be part. They're on that puzzle piece. They want to so desperately be part. The other thing that I learned quickly is journaling to the parents is really important, because they are missing out on so much. So especially if they have a baby or a toddler, they learn new things every single day, right? And they want to be a part of that. And we can give them that piece and show them like the milestones, or how their days were, or how their week's going, or how school's going through journaling. And what I will say is, you know, I always signed it like with love. Sometimes as I got to know them more, which is the next one, was encouragement. I would say, "I'm thinking of you, keep going, keep pushing." I would always refer to their child as their child, right? So that they knew that I wasn't trying to come in and kind of take their child away. That wasn't my intentions. But really, you'll see, even if they don't respond, that's another thing. Sometimes we can be like, well, what are we writing about, right? Like, we're writing to no one, nobody's responding. They might not have anything to respond with, because if you talk to a bio parent, they might say to you, "You know what? I saw everything you journaled, but what was I to give back? I'm not with that child all the time, and that's hard for me. And your words meant a lot, and it made me feel part of it, but I didn't feel like I could contribute anything back." So just know, like in journaling and encouragement, it doesn't have to be both ways. It's just for us to help bridge that gap of communication, so that they are getting updates on their child. They are feeling part of it. They are feeling inclusive. Encouragement is a really, really key. We might be the only person in their life that's encouraging them. And regardless, as we go through this journey, right, we're going to go through a couple more steps of how the child's journey through foster care goes. Regardless of the outcome, their parent will always be their parent. So by us pouring into them, by us encouraging them, even if it's difficult, even if it's not reciprocated, we're pouring love and not fear into our children, into our children too, because by pouring into their parent, we're also pouring into them as well. One of the things people will say when we talk about language is, "Oh, they went back? Oh, that must have been really hard. I don't know how you did that. What did they go back to? Like what?" And I'm like, you know what? I said, in our situations, they got the best of both worlds. They got their parents back. They got reconnected, right? They saw what pushing through some hard stuff and really doing the hard work looks like. And they also saw us supporting it. And they also have us if that's what they want in life. So like, the child actually, in our cases, walked away with more by going home because we could also be a support to them and to their family. And they don't have to kind of walk through that loss the way that our adopted children do. So it's really important, like I said, to encourage. I'll give you a quick, scenario that we did that was a really pivotal point. And again, this was all just us walking through this journey and just learning and just letting our hearts lead and not fear. And just like Brian said, when you let love lead and when you let your empathy lead, it shuts down the fear. So one of our kiddos was born addicted. Mom left the hospital and was pretty much MIA for the first 5 months of our little guy's life. And to be honest, at that time, not many people thought she was going to be able to do it. And that amount of time had gone by. You kind of get comfortable. Her visits were taken away, which doesn't happen often anymore, but her visits were taken away because she couldn't show up and be in a healthy state of mind for her baby. And so we had an SPR at the 6-month mark, and she came, which I was actually very surprised about. And because never expect anything in foster care. That's the first thing, never expect, because it'll completely go different. She showed up and said, I've been clean for 2 weeks. I'm waiting for housing. I'm trying to get into a long-term rehab facility. And she looked good. Like, she looked really good. And I encouraged her. We talked, and they were going to have a court date in a couple of weeks. So they were going to reinstate visitation. And so they were moving towards that. She was waiting to get her bed in a long-term rehab, and she got visitation reinstated. And then that same day, a bed opened up at a long-term facility. And so she had to say, okay, like, I want to see, she hasn't seen her child now in almost 8 months, but she had to say, I have to take this opportunity to get myself better, right? And it hurt my heart because I'm like, she's doing so well, and she doesn't get, and the long-term rehab facility was 5 hours away. So it wasn't like they could do visits. It was just, so it was really weighing on me. And I went to the caseworker and I said, can we take him up there if we're willing to? And she's like, yeah. She's like, sure. I'm like, I think they have family things, and maybe we can like go up one day when it's a family thing. And she's like, yeah, that would be really great. So connected with her. She was like, oh, that'd be wonderful. It took about a month and a half. And we drove up 5 hours away. And to be honest with you, I was worried because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so awkward because I'm going to have a 10-month-old who hasn't seen his parent now in 10 months. At that age where they start to get like funny, like if they don't know you, they don't go to you. And I'm like, in my mind, I'm creating all these scenarios. That's another thing. Don't create all the scenarios. So in my mind, I'm like creating all the scenarios, and I'm like, okay, he's not going to reach for her, and he's going to be very like timid, and I'm going to have to tell a joke, and I'm going to have to like keep it like you're trying to figure out how you're going to navigate this difficult situation that you've created in your head. And we get there, and we get out of the car, and he reaches for her. And she will tell you, because we've talked on a lot of panels together, she will tell you that she felt like in her mind, she was questioning on whether she could be the parent. He was with this great family, right? Maybe she should leave him with this great family. What could she offer? That she hasn't even been able to be his mom for the last 10 months. And she created that scenario too in her head. And when he reached for her, she knew that she had to do what she needed to do and that he was meant to be with her. And I knew driving home, I cried for 5 hours on the way home because I knew he was eventually going to go return to parent, and he did. And it was 2 years. We had him for 2 years, and he returned to parent, and they are doing amazing. He is 10 years old. She has been clean for almost 10 years now, and yeah, amazing. So do you want to?
Can you explain journaling to me? 'Cause
Sure.
I guess I'm a little confused.
Sure.
Like, is it, I used to, in my world, it's a communication book. A lot of it goes back and forth between school and home. So with the journaling, how do you do that?
So great question. So the question was for everyone online, journaling, how do we do that in terms of foster care? So what I did was I got a really cute like journal book and put it in their diaper bag. And it would stay in their diaper bag, or stay, if you're gonna, like, if it's an older child, it can be in a backpack.
Okay.
Or you can give it to the driver as well, who picks them up, or you can give it to the caseworker if you're transporting them. And I would just let the caseworker know I started a journal. And so a couple of times I hadn't even met them yet. So I would write in there, like, this is who I am, this is a little about me. And so, and then I would start putting like milestones in and be like, I just wanted to give you an update. This week was, you know, they started their first food, or they liked it or they didn't like it. I would just, whatever I could give to give that, because they miss so much, to give that connection piece, to say, this is what your child's done.
So that's when they're visiting.
Yes, when they're
Okay,
visiting.
I guess I was thinking it was like a weekly thing.
Yeah. So
It's not necessarily.
I did it every week. But if they're not going for visits, yes. The other thing I would encourage you is if they're not too, we can also do a journal of their journey, right? And keep those milestones with them, so that if they return to a family member, if they return back to their parent, we can give them that book almost as like their baby book too, right?
Mhm.
And like I did like a scrapbook from one of my kiddos, and like had all the pictures in there, so like they could remember like everything. And so either way, like even if you can't do it directly to the parent, because maybe they're not having visitation, you can still keep that journal for your kiddo, so that they have those moments too, wherever they go. If they don't stay with you, if they stay with you, great, you have that too. It's kind of like a baby book. But it really just, again, helps kind of that connection piece, and just really helps bridge the gap. Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I have a situation where I have two kiddos, and I've kind of been mom for a long time now. And all of a sudden, it's kind of the same scenario. Mom is clean now, her mind is, clear, and all these things. And so I've had no input at all. But now it's like this phantom has come to life, basically, because she's clean and sober. I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around it. Like, how do you transition from, okay, she's just a phantom, to like, oh my God, she's real now? And are you allowed to set up visits without the department knowing? Not like.
No, they have to know. They have
Yeah.
to know. But yes, you can, you can do other visitation if that's what you're comfortable with. But I would encourage you, and listen, this I think is a learning and a journey for all of us. I think if we keep the biological parent always in the forefront, right, in the beginning, if that happens, we already have it there, right? And I think there's no amount of time that can be too long where we can't say, I'm super proud of you. Like, I'm like overjoyed for you. We can pour into that, even if we're just meeting them, right? Like, we have an opportunity to pour love into them. And I think my experience, for the most part, it's usually received. Sometimes it takes a little bit, because I think there has to be like that trust kind of piece to it. But I think it's received, and I think they feel it. And I think our kiddos see it. Like, our kiddos have seen all 6 of our guys that have returned home, which I'll get to, in a minute. But all of our kiddos that have returned have felt our love and support of their parents, which has actually made it easier for them to have all of us in their life. Because if we're all on the same page and we're all inclusive of each other, then that makes it easier for them. Because I think sometimes too, some of our kiddos might go home and they might feel awkward about trying to keep in touch with us. Like, is that going to hurt my mom? Is that going to hurt my dad? Right. But if you build that relationship, then it becomes more like, oh, like this is an extended part, like Brian said before too, right? Extending, and I think Angela mentioned it too, expanding their kind of, you know, little circle of family. It shouldn't just be, in my opinion, when it's foster care, I think the traditional family gets thrown out the window, because the goal should be, let's come alongside the child and support them however that looks, right? So I think just keeping it in the beginning out there, I think helps in the transition.
I think so too. One of my fears is that the first time we meet is going to be at a doctor's appointment for one of the kids. And I really don't want that, because I've been praying for her. I've been having the children pray for her. I've been saving things for her and stuff like that. I don't want it to be so sterile.
Right.
Yes, that's
So-
exactly.
so-
I'm terrified of that, but I don't know how to address it with the caseworker.
Yeah, so what the question that she mentioned was, how do you, if like she doesn't want the first time she meets, like she's fearful of what that looks like, right? Where it's gonna be, if the doctor's office. I think my first statement, like to Brian, there is no fear in love, right? So I think we do get fearful as foster parents and adoptive parents. But there's no, if love goes first, so like if I was meeting a parent the first time in a doctor's office or in a waiting room, I would first introduce myself and say, can I give you a hug? And I know that might feel very uncomfortable, but I have done that and they take the hug. And here's the thing, they might be like, no, and that's okay too, be like, that's okay. But there is so much going on with them that the more we can kind of push through with that love, the easier the relationship gets. When they know, if we go in hugging them, that sends an immediate, to me, an immediate signal that, like, I care for you. I care for your child. I care for you. You're important to that child.
All right, so I'm thinking about, I'm just thinking about going into a doctor's office. Like, is somebody calling the doctor and saying, listen, this is happening, so that doctor doesn't say something stupid?
So
That's what,
and it happens.
Predict, but there's sometimes we
Yeah,
need to
yeah,
predict.
yeah.
Because this is the first time, and if that doctor has no experience whatsoever about all of this here, I
Yep.
think they need to know that you need to make sure that the language, you know, that would be my fear.
Yeah.
And that would be my first thing. I'd be saying, you better make sure somebody calls the doctor and lets them know what to say and what not to say.
So the question is, like, if we go to a doctor's appointment and now we have a doctor who might not be very educated in foster and adoptive care and might say something silly. What I would say is, I think bringing the case, like, especially if it's an initial meeting and it's at the doctor's office, having the caseworker there, I think just helps. So like, just say, like, I'm really excited. I'm excited to meet mom. I'm a little fearful, but I'm excited. You know, could you come make sure that, you know, you're there as well? And they will, they absolutely will. And hopefully, I've never had a time where a parent's just shown up. It doesn't mean it can't happen. And I think you deal with it in the moment. But it's always, I usually know when they're coming. I usually, either in the beginning, they want to be part and they want to be part of that, but just say it in the beginning, like, hey, first visit, can you come with us to the doctor's office? And that just will help kind of bridge it a little bit. And then the other thing is, if that parent wants to continue to come to the doctor's appointments, try to get the same doctor every time, because then you're not explaining the same thing, or like in that, like, oh, who are you? Who are you? What's your name? Like, you know, so like you can get, yeah, so like just stay consistent. Yes, exactly. Just stay consistent with it to keep that there. Yeah.
And I would say, as far as like the connection, so like visitation, right? Like we would send on Thanksgiving 2 like takeout containers with like a turkey breast, mashed potatoes, carrots for the parents, and then like a turkey baby food for the baby, because they don't get Thanksgiving together. and some like really cool paper plates and like, pretty forks and all the things, right? So that they can enjoy like a meal together, Thanksgiving meal together. Christmas time, have them make like, take their little thumb and paint. You can make anything. You can make like Christmas trees or reindeer or whatever with their little thumb and their little footprints or whatever. And it just connects the parent to the child. And they have that on Christmas morning to look at. And so that's to me is like, by all the onesies, Mommy's little Valentine, like Mommy's little Irish baby, whatever it is, right? All the things, buy the onesies. And so that when they get there, there's that connection, there's that bond, and you're keeping that kind of thing. As far as the perception of the child, think of a scenario where you are, maybe an older child and you're talking about how mom is doing, okay? Mom's addiction is really taking over her life, okay? This is a true statement, okay? What are you picturing? Mom's in a gutter, right? Mom is like strung out somewhere, like you're getting a really bad picture of mom in your head. Versus, mom is struggling right now, but I can tell you that she's doing her best with what she has. Now, that doesn't apply to the child. She's not doing well, but it takes that image out of the child's head of a strung out mom and changes it over into somebody who's trying, right? And that's what you always want to preserve. You want to preserve that relationship. You want to be that, like I said, that bubble that stops the bad from coming and hitting the child over and over and over again, because they are going to experience that for the rest of their lives. So,
yeah, and I think back to Angie's point, our kids do hear us, right? They hear our words. They hear what we're saying to them. Our 11-year-old got off the bus. First of all, the bus is like a wild jungle in my opinion, but they got off the bus and she was upset. And I said, what happened? And she said, one of the kids on the bus, she's very open about being adopted. And one of the kids on the bus said, hey, said her name. Why are you adopted? Because your real parents didn't want you. They didn't want you. And I got so angry at that statement. And she replied, and I said, what did you say? I said, that's a really hurtful statement. And she said, I said, no, my parents love me a lot. They just couldn't care for me. And in that moment, I knew that she heard everything that I'm pouring, because they hear what we're saying. They hear, and again, we can take something, you can have the same situation, you can pour more positive words into it, even though it's still a bad situation, or you can kind of talk about the negative. It's our choice, right? What we choose to speak into our children, speak into their lives, but it's really important. And in that moment, she taught me, she hears me. She hears me pouring that into her. And she was able to take a very difficult, hurtful statement. And I'm like, where does this kid live? What's his parents' name, right? And she's like, Mommy. And I said, are you okay? And she said, I'm okay. And then her assistant principal got involved just like to check on her because the bus driver had heard it and reported back to the assistant principal. And then like a week later, we were talking at dinner and she's like, oh, I visited the assistant principal at lunch today. And I was like, oh, right, what happened? And she's like, I just wanted to go back and tell her I'm okay. And because I think she was like worried that like she would feel like she had a lot of emotions, but like, again, it doesn't make it an easy situation, but again, what we pour into them helps them cope and helps them get through in a more positive light. I know I kind of skipped to here, but this is an important one. So now, okay, we have the removal, we have the family connections. Now what? They might return. They might return back to their family, back to their parents. What does that look like? What can we do as foster adoptive parents? We can celebrate it. That's the first thing. We can celebrate it. I had a moment, we had twin boys from the time that they were born until 2.5. And we had their 10-year-old brother until he was 13. And when they were leaving, because we had them for so long, I was really going to miss them. I was really going to miss them. And I was having a hard time with it. And as we got closer, we would go to court and we saw their mom, who again, we kind of made that relationship and connection with. And I remember we were in the court, the kids came with us, they went into the daycare there. And I remember thinking, oh, I hope they don't call me mommy. I hope they don't call me mommy, because I don't want her to feel that, right? And feel like I've replaced her or whatever. So I was kind of feeling that in my mind. And so we go in, they do the plan to return to parent, they start that process. And when I picked them up from their visit, I took a moment and I said to their mom, I said, I just want to let you know something. I said, I don't want you to think that because I might be sad and because I might cry, that don't mistake that for me not being so happy and so overjoyed for you and so proud of you. Like, I don't want you to think that minimizes any of that, because I am so proud of you, but I'm going to miss the boys. And she grabbed my hand and she said, thank you, but you're their mom too, and they'll always have you too. And she said, and it was like the most like, here I am, I don't want the boys to call me mom, right? And here's the thing, we have the relationship. She comes for Christmas, she comes all the time. My son got married a little over a year ago, and all of our guys that returned, so at the time it was 17 children in total, we flew them out to Kansas City, and all of us attended my son's wedding. And their moms came too. And when we do family vacations, Outer Banks has really big houses because we need a really big house. We invite their moms, and it's really beautiful. I get to see how well they're doing. I get to give them a little something because they work really hard, both of them. And so it's just, again, like, when a child enters into foster care, I really want to encourage to try to look at this as like a full circle support and what that can look like. And again, I don't have all the answers, but I know that if you show up with love, and I know if you show up with empathy, it breaks down walls, right? So offer that support when they're returning. What can I do? That's how Fostering Hope Together got birth, was because our little guy went home. His mom had nothing because she had just been in a rehab and halfway house for 2 years. And so we said, what can we do? Can we get you a couch, a bed? Like, what do you need? And people always want to help. So they're like, oh, I have this, I have that. But showing that support, whatever that looks like. Hey, I know this child's returning home. If you need respite care, if you need a break, if you need something, I will be happy. Just call me up. That's also a way, right? Because then we get to see them and love on them, but we're also giving them, because maybe they haven't been a full-time parent in a couple of years, right? So like, just even a simple statement that says, listen, even after, keep my number. If you need something, call me, right? Loss. So I mentioned loss. We feel loss. The foster parent experiences the loss. And I'm not going to minimize it because it's hard. It's hard to walk through it. But it's how it should be. It doesn't always get to be that way, but it's how it should be. And we just need to kind of push through. When our 3 little guys that I was telling you about, the twins and their brother, went home, I was like, okay, God, I quit. Like, I can't do, like, I was just a mess. Like, I miss them so much. But we're needed. Like, we are needed. Our impact's really important in these guys' lives, and whatever that looks like, if we can take the loss so that they don't have to, bring it on. Like, that's what, it doesn't mean we don't feel it. It doesn't mean we don't walk through it. But we have each other to kind of walk us through that as well, because we've been through it. And I think the last thing is openness, because I think we have to be open. The story can go in so many different ways. But I think in the beginning, if you set the stage and show that empathy and show that love, then the story can be, I would have never guessed that we would be at my son's wedding with all 17 of my kids and their birth moms. That's not what I would have ever envisioned, but it's where we were led with love. And that's the key. Love, positive language is key.
And I'll say, so for one of ours, we had him for about 1.5 years, and we actually testified on behalf of the parents so that he could go home. And we got to bring him home. And I remember like walking up the apartment stairs with him, and mom was just like, oh, I mean, it was like this beautiful, beautiful, right? And then I got in my car and I went home and I saw the crib and I broke. Like, I broke so hard. And because there is like this beauty that's there. I'm like, wow, like I took part in like having this child go home and be reunified, and then there's this brokenness where you're like, that hurts me, and it might even hurt him, right? Because for those 2 years, I was his mom, right? He saw, unfortunately, how it is, an hour a week, parents get an hour a week, it's just like, how, and then, we get the paperwork. It's like, is the child bonded with the foster family? Well, of course they're bonded with the foster family. They have seen bio for 1 hour this week. And so just taking part in that was like, it was beautiful. It really was. So the activity part is, I've heard, I hope I can keep them. Because now it's been 1.5 years, right? Mom's going, right? She's not necessarily, but she's not yet. And I have heard people say that where their foster kids have heard it. Not the statement, right? That's not the statement that you want the kids to hear. That's not putting into their brain, you're for my mom, you're for my family, you're for yourself in this moment. And so the opposite of that is, I have no idea what tomorrow holds. My job right now in this moment today is to love you. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. And I can't tell you if you're going home, and I can't if you're not going home. But today, in this moment, know that I love you deeply. Your family loves you deeply. Everybody in the picture loves you so deeply. And so that is the anti-language to the, I want to keep them language.
Yeah. So last step in navigating care, it could lead to adoption, right? I poured into all of my bio parents the same. And sometimes it didn't work out where they could overcome the addiction or they could get the support. A lot of times, a lot of our kiddos, their parents have gone through such severe trauma, right? And that's why they're in their addictions. And so sometimes it does lead to adoption, right? And so what does that look like? First of all, love, again, I think that's the core. Making sure that even though they're adopted, they feel the connection still to their bio family. And that's through ongoing conversations and action, but making sure that, I always say, my kiddo that we've adopted has experienced loss, and there's nothing that I can do about that. As much as I could rally and as much as I could say, you could do this, it doesn't always end up that way. But I can limit their loss. And how can I limit their loss? I can limit their loss by keeping those bio connections available. That looks differently for all of my almost 8 adopted children. It's every one of my 8 children have bio connections. Their bio parent might not be able to be in their life right now, but their aunts, their cousins, their grandparents, they're in their lives. And some of them, their parents are in their lives, and we see them regularly. And what I think is really, again, having that openness and trying to keep those connections, what I think is really cool is like when we go for Christmas, when it's Christmas time, we either meet somewhere or we'll go to a house, but like it's us and their bio family, but we're one family. And at first it's a little awkward, right? But then it becomes more like, to be honest, like they'll get gifts for all of my kids. They say like, you're all our grandkids, or, these are all their cousins. I'm like, I think too, like sometimes their family wishes they could have come forward, but for some reason, sometimes they can't. But allowing them to still be part of the child's life, to give them that connection is important whenever we can. And I am like a big advocate. The reason why we have 8 adopted children, or almost 8 adopted children, is because we keep siblings together. And so I thought I was done with foster care 3 years ago, and I have a 1-year-old because it is a sibling, the only biological sibling to our 11-year-old adopted daughter. So we felt it was really important that she had that connection. So again, like trying to limit the loss in our children's lives We can do that. We have power to do that. And again, it looks differently. It might just be one person in their family, or, you know, and again, like that journaling, if you keep a journal, maybe their biological parent isn't ready when their rights are terminated, but maybe a few years later they contact you. And maybe like what we've done is we're like, let's meet somewhere, let's get coffee, let's like put eyes on each other, let's talk. So we can kind of like assess how they're doing, and like now there's been time. But really just make that effort, right? And allow that openness, because our kiddos will look for it if we don't give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a choice. We want to be a part of it, or do we want to let them navigate that really hard thing by themselves? So, and again, it could be uncomfortable, but that's why counseling is on here. It's really important that our kiddos have counseling, really important they can talk to people, really important they have those connections. I always say it takes a village. A lot of people want to be part of our village. Let them to have those connections, because our kiddos might find that trusted connection where they can open up to somebody and say, this is how I'm feeling. Or, you know, it's just really important to kind of just put that full support around them in adoption care. Let them see and heard. Let them, you know, it's not us versus their bio families. It's, we are one family, and we navigate that just as a family would do. And they see that, and they hopefully can not have to experience that unknown questions, right? Like we heard Angela talk about today. Hopefully we can help bridge that gap to give them as much information and connection as we can, so that they're not searching it and they're not missing a piece of themselves.
So for us, we know that, I can tell you as a former foster youth, all I ever wanted was to have the same last name as somebody, right? I would have loved to have been adopted. Like that was my dream, right? Like I was like the Annie, like somebody somewhere. So what we kind of came up with was, we know that the kids want to have our last name, but to preserve their last name, we make it their middle name. And so they keep that heritage, they keep that name, you know, and then it just kind of engulfs the whole situation. Activity. So foster adoptive parents, right? You're adoptive. You're such a saint. And the kids, you don't have to do anything, because the kids look at me like, no, you're not. That's the answer. It's like, you know, or like, oh, I could never give them back. Well, you could, or you're gonna go to jail.
Right.
So like, I mean, like there are some practical things to this, but I always say, like, I'm not a saint, and if you want to know that, come to my house when we're late for an appointment and they can't find their shoes and the coat's in the car and on all the things are everywhere. I was like, then come and find out about my sainthood, because it's not there. And so the reality is that adoptive families are just families. That's what we are. You know, we have a child that this way came to us. We love them with all of our heart, and we want to do what's best for them. That is the heart of the adoptive family, right? And so I think it's the last one. Or
yeah, I'll just add one more thing. I say to people when they say at the grocery store, I'm lying, you're amazing. And I say, I'm not amazing, I'm just willing. And it makes them think. It makes, and that's it. We're not perfect. Like we're far from perfect, and we navigate this messy journey, really messy sometimes, right? But if we allow our hearts to lead us, that's what gets us through.
So the quote that we kind of came up with to end all of this is, the power lies within our language to create the resilience of a child. And that is our superpower, right? We can speak life and into these kids, we can speak hope into them. And I can tell you that my uncle, who was my kinship uncle, who was 60 something years old when I went to live with him as a traumatized 13-year-old, I can tell you right now, he spoke life. And he was the pivot point for me. He was the one that said, hold on, you're going to do this job and you're going to do it well. And then I'm going to praise you. And he did. And it started to build me up more and more and more and more. And I wasn't there very long, but I can tell you that the impact that he had on me in that short time of just not giving up, not walking away, and just instilling hope, 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 hope. You can, you can, you can, you can, is really what took me down from a bad path as a 13-year-old to complete trajectory. So That is all.